Revenge films.
My name is Tyler Relieves. I'm 29, and while the business is small, I make a living by making instruments and selling them. I'm in my first year of being married to my wife, who's 27. I founded the business when I was 25. In high school, I boasted I was going to be a rock star and dropped. And then I had an accident. It's not that I'm no longer able to play instruments, but I just became a hollow shell. The owner of the concert hall took pity on me and kindly introduced me to an instrument manufacturer and repair workshop. I did repair work there, saved up, renovated the place, and created my own business. But truth be told, my master provided a large portion of that money. He said he'd held some money back from my pay each time, but I don't think that's true. I was quite busy for a while afterwards, meeting people and repairing this and that. But when it all finally became a routine, I met my wife. Her parents were very kind folks, at least until the wedding. Handmade from scratch, my products were sold at $2,000 at the cheapest. This line of work has very unstable income, but the average monthly income is more than 10 grand. My in-laws were apparently especially interested in that. Whenever something financial would come up, they would pester me. What was worse, they did so while beating around the bush. In these times, perhaps she awoke to the sound of coins clinking, but my young sister-in-law, a 19-year-old college student, started to spring on me as well. Why she would appear, I later found out. I'd started to notice that a few of my guitars had gone missing. The made-to-order products were safely protected in a locked vault, so there was no damage done. What she took away were, in a nutshell, the toys to try out. They were made for experimentation purposes and for showing customers my skill in the practice. They do cost some, and there are a few folks who appreciate my work. So those would cost around $10,000 in damages. I don't care about that. What I do care about is the fact that products I made when I was in training and when I was financially tight are now gone. My wife was crying. She said she wasn't able to stop her sister from taking them. I found this out later, but it turns out that when my wife was born, there was a family crisis. My mother-in-law versus her mother-in-law, and she was not given much attention. However, when the elder later passed away, that gave my mother-in-law all the time in the world to spoil the newborn, my sister-in-law. How they were raised are as different as chalk and cheese. My sister-in-law was favored, and my wife was treated like she'd never existed. She grew up into the selfish woman she is now, and was always condescending her older sister, my wife, and abusing her. But my in-laws never punished her, and rather told my wife to forgive her. Such was how they were raised, and my wife couldn't stand up for herself against her as a result. I went to my in-laws' place once I figured out who took the guitars. When I told them the whole story, they went on saying,
"I don't believe it. She'd never do such a thing."
My sister-in-law herself joined the meeting and said,
"I never did such a thing. It's just my sister's big mouth. I don't freaking need those guitars."
Quite the insults if you ask me. I see. I understand now that it never was you who took them. The cost and damage is quite substantial, so I'll have to report it to the police. Please let me know if you have any help to give. Good day. I barely finished my sentence when my sister-in-law shot to her feet, and in a voice that was nigh on yelling, she said,
"What unbelievable lies! What do you mean quite substantial, when everything combined barely got me $100?
As she blurted this out, her face turned fraught with guilt. I could no longer keep my cool at this point. Sold? You sold them? Did you frickin' sell them, yes or no? The hell you think you're doing? You can't sell them for money just like that! I can't believe this! I may have gotten too excited, but she fought back with that big attitude of hers.
You can't blame me. There was this concert I've been meaning to go to, but I was too broke to go. Surely you would understand how I would be feeling in that scenario? Plus, what belongs to a family member belongs to the whole family. You have many guitars on display in your workshop, so I think you can spare 2 or 3.
My energy drained away completely. My vision turned white. I'm ashamed to admit I started to cry. Among those she sold, there was the newest model, which I'd named using the name of my wife. I talked so much with her about how it would be made, even though she didn't understand anything about instruments.
It sounds wonderful.
Those 3 words from her mouth carved a deep memory into me and into the guitar. It was a cute yellow guitar on display for people to play to their heart's glee. My in-laws said, "I didn't think you'd make such a fuss about 2 or 3 guitars."
Indeed. Couldn't you just make more?
Oh, the audacity! It was no use talking about it anymore, so we just left. My wife cried as we talked about it. She was so brave as to say,
I'll break ties with those wretched people. Let's not see them again.
and I cried that night. I never cried so much in my life, drowned in my sorrows, and played my art pieces loud and clear in the dead of night. Later, my sister-in-law sent me a letter with $100 inside. Apparently, she had felt bad for what she did, but my in-laws' attitudes were like, "So now that's done with, eh?" This didn't begin to cover the damages. But more to the point, I was fed up with their good-for-nothing, couldn't-care-less attitudes. It's not a problem about money. I don't need money. But please, do not bring this up again. My sister-in-law somehow understood this as me saying that I didn't care if my guitars were sold. Probably my parents-in-law told her this nonsense. She then began to ask me for money directly. "No money, eh? Then get a job!" To this, she mumbled back.
Jeez, what a grouch.
She left as she muttered probably nasty things, and ever since, she hasn't set a foot in my house. About 6 months later, a friendly neighbor in high school who often stopped by the workshop brought a case along with him. When I opened it, lo and behold, a yellow guitar. He'd apparently noticed something was wrong with me after the guitar was stolen. This kid would always say, "I'm saving up to hire you to make me a guitar, Mr. Tyler. I just know in my gut you make the best around here because of the passion you put into your work." He is such a good kid, doing his best with school, his part-time job, and his band. He happened to find this on sale, so he quickly pulled money from his account and bought it. "It's something important to you, right? Don't let this guitar or your wife go, eh?" His laugh made my entire month. My wife was very happy about this when I told her, but her face turned mysterious pretty quickly.
I'm so sorry, dear. I won't give any more money to those people. I will get stronger. You'll see.
Unbeknownst to me, all my in-laws pressured my wife into giving them money. Plus, whenever she would refuse, they would physically abuse her in ways so that I could never imagine this ever happened. The bruises and scars on her body knew no bounds, it seemed. My fury exploded at last. I decided vengeance. And that night, I apologized to her. I begged for her forgiveness in advance about what I was going to do next. She responded that she didn't mind going to the police on account of the theft of my guitars, but that she didn't want me to say anything about her family abusing her. Her reason? Because it was, quote, disgraceful. I promised her I wouldn't do anything she didn't want me to, and began the preparations for vengeance. I was later told that she assumed I was going to barge in on one of her family meetings. I explained everything, and arranged for the deliveries of drums, a guitar, a bass guitar, and some vocal equipment. I borrowed a truck, loaded the stuff, along with some amplifiers, and returned to my house. First, I apologized to the neighbors. I explained some of the situation to them without telling them about my wife being abused. To my surprise, it seemed that my family was disliked by a good deal of the neighbors, and many approved of my plan. "That's good! That's very good! You show those eggheads who's boss!" Apparently, my sister-in-law also demanded money from her childhood friends and from kids younger than her. And what was worse, her parents never disciplined her, and rather let her run wild. My parents-in-law themselves also twisted up conversations, so they would always end up with them saying,
You'll pay for this.
"You better compensate!" They were notorious for demanding money from other people.
I told the police, and they told me that the exchanging of money between individuals was not in their legal jurisdiction and couldn't help me in this at all.
For real, I'm sick of those baboons. Teach them a lesson.
With the neighbor's support, I was more determined than ever, and I pushed my father-in-law's car out of the garage onto the road. I borrowed the outlet that was on their house. What belongs to a member belongs to the whole family, right? I parked the truck in the garage and setting everything up went very well. We started by giving them a good immediate dose of street jazz. Plus, we placed the amps towards their house. They stumbled outside and probably made a fuss. We couldn't hear them and never stopped playing. Our vocalist made us laugh with, "You can't stop the rockin' and rollin'!" The audience quickly climbed in numbers. It was so long since I played in a band, I got really carried away. I went inside my in-laws' place and wreaked havoc. I left my sister-in-law's room in complete chaos and messed up everything I could in the house. Explosive noise from the outside, screams from the inside. The house had turned into a makeshift concert mosh pit. After I was satisfied for a bit, I took the mic, and I think I said something like, "I challenge any adult who can trample people's happiness and demand for money, money, and more money!" I felt like I jumped back into the past at that point. That eat my ass po-po and frick the state and the bozos attitude. But all I did was leave the house in disarray. I never broke anything. To my disappointment, it seemed they still had their sanity. Afterwards, I talked with those eggheads, and with my energy as explosive as ever, frick money and frick you for being so attached. Rock and roll your lives, bitches! I basically talked in whatever a middle school would mistake as rock and roll language. My sister-in-law started to complain, but all I said in response was that if she didn't want me to file a report on the theft, she should shut the hell up. This was quite some time after the crime, and I didn't even know if I could do that anymore, but her lack of brains helped as she stayed quiet afterwards. I then went home and showed my wife the DVD that recorded everything. We sat down, drinking and talking side by side. She was like, "I didn't think you'd go this far," and laughed. Perhaps she was so relieved, but she started to cry. Later, I went around apologizing for the ruckus I'd caused, but they would tell me whenever they came to demand money,
It sure would be nice for that gentleman to play again, huh?
and they would skedaddle away in cowardice, paler than a piece of mozzarella. By the way, about that high school kid, I got some info out of casual chatting, and without letting him know how I made it, I plan to give it to him as a present when it's finished.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.